Okay, so I think that whenever you learn how to make granny squares, you should learn how to make a traditional granny square first, just because it's kind of the foundation of all the other ones, just the structure of it. So I'm just going to make a regular one right now. I like to start mine with a magic ring. It just makes a nice closure in the middle. It still has all the holes between each section, but the middle doesn't have a hole. And I like the way it holds. I like the way that it looks. So when I make my magic ring, put the yarn right here on my middle finger and hold it with my thumb. Wrap it around my index finger, and then around my ring finger, and then back around the back of my hand. So I have an X, and I just hold it in place with my thumb. And on this side, you'll have 2 bars. And there's a ton of different YouTube videos to show you how to do this, but this is just how I make mine. So you go under the first one and hook this one, and pull it through. Keep that on your hook and flip your hook over. And you'll go back under here and then hook that and pull it through like this. And it makes a nice little loop. And I have to hold this with my finger and my thumb, or it'll loosen up. So, and some people will chain right here, but I don't like the way that looks either. So you would just make like a single crochet. Actually, no, making a granny square, let's do a chain. So chain 2, and then double crochet. So we're going to yarn over and go through the loop, and then work off 2, and that first 2 chain is going to be the first stitch. So it's going to count as 1 double crochet in my cluster, because you want the clusters to kind of be equal in size. So there's my first cluster, and then I'm going to chain 2, and then do 3 double crochet, and then chain 2, and this is our third cluster. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and this will be our fourth cluster of 3. Okay, and then for this corner we're going to chain 2. Now this is where the magic happens. Take this tail. I always make sure it's not wound around this because I don't want it to be bulky. And you just pull it closed. Now, to close this row off, I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the chain here. I'm just going to go into this loop here. There we go. And a slip stitch is where you start off like a single crochet, but you just, instead of drawing up and pulling off those 2, you just pull that first loop through the other one. And it doesn't add any height, it just closes it. So now I'm going to do a chain 3, just so I have this third loop to work into a little bit better. And then we're going to go into the big loops. We don't go into the top of the stitches here. So we go into the corners. So I'm going to yarn over and do a cluster here of 2, because that chain is going to count as our first stitch. So it'll still be a cluster of 3. So there's 1, 2, 3. And then chain 2 and do another cluster in that same corner. And then we're going to skip these 3 stitches and go into the next corner. So yarn over. We don't do a chain here. when you're counting your stitches, you can count the V's in the top, or these are easy to count the bars. So 1, 2, 3. That's the 3 stitches in that cluster. 1, 2, 3. And so you're going to have these gaps, but they're not as big as you think that they are. Like when you look at pictures online, the gaps look huge. It all depends on the type of yarn you're using, the size hook you're using. I'm using a 5.5. That's what this yarn calls for. A 5 or 5.5. This is just worsted weight yarn. And we chain 2 for that corner. And I usually do at least 3 rows, if not 4 in my granny squares, but it really just depends on your preference and what you're making. You can make a whole blanket out of just a granny square. You can also do granny squares in rows. I've made some baby blankets like that, where instead of doing it around the center, you just do it on the chain, and it makes a nice baby blanket. I made my cousin's baby one, and it is actually now his favorite blanket. I think he just turned 5, and that is his blankie, and I love that it is his blankie, and that it's held up over the years, because I gave it to him on his 1st birthday. Okay, so now we're back at the beginning. We're not going to chain here. We're just going to go into this 3rd chain in the top here. Sometimes I have to like put my hook in it, kind of loosen it up. I'm not going to go in from the back, but I'm just loosening it up there. Kind of hold it with my fingers. Now I can get the hook in through the front. Just a little bit of manipulation, and then yarn over and pull through like that. And you can always tighten this down. When you go through to sew this back in, I just weave it back through. I go over the stitch and then take it down under and weave it around on the inside of that. I always call these the little yarn buttholes because that's what they look like. So now we've finished this row. We're gonna flip it. It keeps it from looking twisted. Sometimes it will make them look, well, you want to chain first, but sometimes it'll make it look a little twisted if you don't flip them after each row. All your work will slant to one side, and this kind of helps keep it from doing that. So now we're going to go into this middle hole that's between the clusters that we did in the corners. And we're going to do that chain of 3 and then a double crochet cluster. We're just going to put 2 more here to make 3. And then we're going to work the corners like we did before. You can see that I'm still not really moving my hand. My left hand is pretty much still in the same spot it's always been in. The only thing I'm really moving there are my index finger and my thumb, just to maintain control of the work. But I never actually let it go. I just really slide them around. Like slowly moving up. Okay, so this is our last corner. And just like before, when we get to the last cluster, I'm not going to chain after. It's going to connect to the other cluster just directly. So we've got all of our corners there. I'm going to go into 1, 2, 3, this top chain here. And I always, even though this is annoying, I always make them like this. I go into the chain, the first top loops of the chain, and I leave the back bump back there. So I'm actually, it looks like I'm just going into a regular stitch. Like that. And then yarn over and pull it through, maybe, and pull through there. So I usually will do one more row on the granny square. So again, I'm going to chain 3 and flip it. And now in this one, I'm going to do another 2 double crochet to make that section have its 3 cluster. And then work the corner. The corner always gonna have two clusters with a chain 2 in the middle. I like how it makes all the holes pretty much even. Some people put 3 in the corner, but I like the way it looks with just 2. It works with my tension. Back in the corner, we're going to do another cluster of 2. And you just have to remember these 2 right here, or any that are between the corners, you don't chain 2 between those. Those cluster corners should touch. It always helps to like pull some yarn out for your tension. That way this is all loose. You don't have this tension trying to pull this out as you work. So I always pull a little extra out and just leave it laying out. And then if I decide to put it down and not work on it, I'll just wrap it around the ball until I'm ready to work again. And this is something like if you decided to double it up or use thicker yarn, use cotton. It can be a lot of different things. You can make bags out of these. You can make blankets. You can make trivets for your kitchen. This is acrylic, so you wouldn't want to use this around anything hot, but if you used cotton, you could definitely make a trivet. These could be granny square washcloths. You can sew them together and make a blanket. The reason why I have this color is because this is part of a creeper blanket that I was making for Lexi that I never finished. But I have a shoebox somewhere just full of different colors of green granny squares, just like this one. Okay, so we're back here, and we're gonna go through that chain stitch again. Now we have these tails. So I'll make another video showing how to weave those in.